All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 45th Fusion 360 webinar brought to you by Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you by KETIV Technologies. My name is Brian Monkopunsuk, Customer Success Manager here at KETIV Technologies. And yeah, thank you guys for joining me today on this Friday morning. I decided to turn on the video camera here so you guys can see our faces again. So today we were going to talk about all the new manufacturing enhancements that have come out recently for Fusion 360. If you guys follow Autodesk Fusion 360 on YouTube, you can see that their new what's new in Fusion 360 that they post every 2 to 3 months or so came out for September. And they had one for designs, but they also had one for manufacturing as well. And that's a lot of the topics from that is what I'm going to cover here today. So yeah, if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave it in the Zoom meeting chat, and I'm more than happy to address it during or at the end of the webinar. Also on the line who will be on standby here is Alex Alvarez, just to make sure that I get all my T's crossed and I's dotted in terms of CAM. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into some of the new things here in Fusion 360. So the agenda today, there's some new user interface tabs that they've created. I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that, as well as take advantage of the new tools that have come into Fusion. A lot of little details here that give you more control over the CAM portion inside the CAM side of the manufacturing software here. So here's an agenda. I wanted to include this so then you guys can see what we're going over today. And then when we post this onto our YouTube channel, that you can fast forward if need be to a particular topic. So a lot of turning functionality has come out in this release here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hop over here to Fusion 360. And before I do that, first one we're going to take a look at is that new Tab Toolbar here. So if we take a look here at the top, we have, milling, turning, additive, etc. Under manufacturing. They even have that for design as well. You have solid, surface, or what was the patch environment, form, which was like the surface modeling, and the mesh. All can be located here at the top as tabs, which help make it easier for us to use. And for example, for turning in particular, they separated things like roughing and finishing. So you're less prone to choose a finishing paths for a roughing operation and things like that. So a small little thing, but actually changes the user interface quite a bit there. So minimum radius analysis. So if you're going in to machine this part and you're wondering what is the smallest ball or the biggest ball end mill I can use to cut a curve like that or a curve like that over there. That's what this new tool is, the minimum radius analysis tool is for. If you go under inspect, minimum radius analysis, and you select a body that you want to analyze, it's going to tell us right away that the optimal minimum radius is going to be 62 thousandths of an inch. So if you have a ball end mill that has that radius, then perfect. Then you're good to go. You can machine everything that you see here in green. However, if you try to test it a little bit, if you try to increase the radius of it past 62 thousandths, you're going to start to see that it's not going to be able to machine particular parts of the model here. It still can machine some of them that have a bigger radius, but it's not going to be able to machine some of the 62 thousandths of an inch and under kind of zones here. And we could do that as well for this one right here. Just to give you another example, choose the model. It can machine everything. The minimum radius for this one is 58 thousandths of an inch. And if we go ahead and test how big of a radius we can use, it's going to start to cancel out some of those curves there. So just a cool tool that you can use and see if, do you really need to cut that at a particular radius? And if you do, then you want to just focus on this. This is the number that we're looking for here. That's the most beneficial number from this tool there. So it's something new that's useful for milling operations and things like that. So turning, let's go into turning now. Tangential extensions. So inside turning, if you create a roughing operation, it gives you a nice clean toolpath here. And then if you want to make sure that you have a good, whether it's a finishing operation or maybe even the roughing operation, you want to have a clean lead in here. You don't want it to be too close to the part here. You want to start it from maybe just a little bit further away of a distance. You have that option now. If you go back to edit that toolpath, under geometry, if you select the front of the model and you add, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit here, 25,000 or 250 thousandths up in the front, and in the back you're going to add the same, or maybe just 100 thousandths. You could see that this toolpath extended to the front, and it's going to come in earlier, and then it might cut a little bit of air, but it's going to give you that guarantee of a finish or of a beginning cut, that it's not going to hit your model right away. If for whatever reason, if you measured it wrong or something like that, and you come in right away without that control, it has the possibility of giving you that weird burr or something in the beginning of that cut. So you just have that capability at the front, but as well as the back. I told it to extend just a little bit more in the back, so just to cut it a little bit cleaner there as well. So you have that capability with tangential extensions. In addition, you have X and Z clearances. So if we go back to that toolpath here, and we did edit these tangential extensions. If we go to the linking tab now, and you can see here the Z and X clearance. So the X clearance, if I change this to something like 100 thousandths of an inch and hit OK, it's going to tell me, it's going to give me an air cutting move, but do I want to ignore that? Like, sure. Yeah, I want to have more control, or they gave me more control here in Fusion to maybe cut the air a little bit to make sure that we're coming in at the way we want to come in. Maybe you don't want your first cut over here to actually cut the model. Maybe you want to see one air maneuver first, and then go into start roughing out this model here. So you have control to increase the height of the clearance here for the X direction and the Z direction as well. Vertical and horizontal passes. So if we go back into that operation again, so far we've seen horizontal passes, but if we go into the cycle here and change this to vertical passes, or there's also a back cutting operation or pass, now it's coming in at this angle rather than from left to right. It's coming from up to down onto the part. So if you need vertical passes, you can now include that here within your turning toolpaths. Right? And contact point versus cutting edge. So if we go back to that model again, or to that toolpath again, and we go over to radii, for example, you can see here the tool limit gives you the option to either choose a cutting edge or a contact point. And by default, it's contact point. But the difference between these two, and they also talk about this in the what's new, is that you have, if you have cutting edge, there's a theoretical point here where it's going to leave. It's going to stop the toolpath at the tip of the theoretical tip here of this cutting edge or cutting tool. So it might leave a little scallop on your model there. It might leave some material on the model. But if you leave it as the default, which is contact point, it's going to go past just a little bit because it knows it really finishes cutting at the end here, not the tip of the cutting tool, but really at the corner here of the tool. So you're going to want to leave contact point for the most part for some of your models, unless you really need to end it here. Maybe there's like another wall coming up and it needs to end perfectly there, then that's fine as well. Same with facing operations. If you don't want to leave that little nub at the tip of your turning operations with cutting edge, then you can tell it to do contact point, or just leave it as default as contact point. And it'll just cut through it, cut down a little bit more just to get rid of that nub there, so you don't have to worry about getting that off later down the line. All right, so there's a couple more for turning, but those are some of the main ones I wanted to show you guys.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add one more thing, and reason why I want to add it is because I think this is a pretty huge one in the past, probably 2 to 3 years that I've been at least working with Fusion. A lot of our customers have been asking for it, and it's the ability to use CAN cycles when you're creating a roughing toolpath. So, you know, a lot of people, if they're not familiar with CAN cycles, so essentially it shrinks down the code. It really only limits it probably to maybe 10, 15 lines of code, instead of having all of those different movements posted out, right, which can be probably up to 100 different lines of code when you're doing a roughing operation. But now Fusion 360 does allow for CAN cycles. So if you want to edit that profile roughing, Brian, just real quick so we show where it's at. If you go to the passes tab, and no, I don't think it's going to be that one right here. If you want to show my screen here so I can show them exactly where it's
at. Sure.
All right, so you guys take a look at the profile roughing strategy here. Notice that you now have the ability to use CAN cycles. You do want to test it out with your post. Obviously, make sure that it is formatted to post out CAN cycles. But just wanted to give you guys a heads up that if you guys do want to use CAN cycles and are familiar with CAN cycles, you now have the ability to select that. So that's kind of what I wanted to show. Sorry for interrupting.
No. Thank you for interrupting. I wanted to make sure to get all the new goods here with the new manufacturing updates. All right, so that's the mains for turning there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next huge addition to Fusion 360, which is the manufacturing extension. So this is like an add-on. Here in Fusion, if you see at the top right of your Fusion screen, there's this wrench symbol that says extensions. If you click on that, if you haven't purchased it yet, it's going to say 125 cloud credits to purchase this monthly subscription to the extensions here. And I already purchased it, so it's just telling me I have 28 days remaining. And essentially, 125 cloud credits is like $125. So you're thinking, wow, okay, it's a decent amount of money there, right? But what you're getting for it is, and especially if you use it, it's way beyond would way outweigh the cost, because you're getting features from essentially things like PowerMill software, like PowerMill, advanced CAM software, feature CAM. Like these are thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of software that they have these kind of like steep and shallow strategy, which we'll be going into here. Is found in PowerMill and FeatureCam. Hole recognition, you can automatically pick up holes and it'll create toolpaths for you, pick the tools for you, save you a bunch of time instead of spending 15 to 20 minutes per model to find the holes in your model and create those toolpaths. You can use the automatic hole recognition. They've included probe geometry and surface inspection strategies. So now you're able to essentially check your model with your machine with the probing tool, and then it'll spit it back out to Fusion, and you can see where the cuts were perfect and where the cuts were not. And you're getting things like that with these extensions, and it's only like a monthly commitment. So let's go ahead and show you guys. I want to show you guys what these tools can do And then it's up to you, you know, if you decide that you want to use it or not. And so let's go here to our last example. And the first one is the steep and shallow operation. So if I go over to my milling tab under 3D, it's going to be shown there. And the neat thing about this tool, it combines a set of contour passes for the steep areas and parallel and scallop passes for the shallow areas in all-in-one tool. It's a good go-to tool, which gives you a clean, nice clean finish. So you don't have, so you can create just those better quality parts that really make it worth it in the end. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm just going to select the boundary of my model there because I just want to rough out or finish this part of my model. And then it's going to load a little bit here, and it's going to create that steep and shallow toolpath for us.
And I like what you did there, Brian, too, is, you know, that's kind of one of the things that I've been mentioning to a lot of people using some of the more advanced toolpaths is, you know, select the boundary, select your tool, and then just run the toolpath, see what kind of toolpath it gives you, just to kind of verify that it's at least doing somewhat of what you expected the toolpath to do, right? And then after that, you can kind of start going in and fine-tuning the toolpath.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, you know, that's kind of the typical workflow that I recommend people, at least when they're starting off with either a brand new toolpath or just getting involved with some of these more higher end toolpaths.
Yeah, let the software do the thinking, and then you can start creating afterwards. So here's the steep and shallow toolpath that it generated for us. Yeah, this can just really help. So you don't have to like worry about the finishing yourself. You can just have or manually finishing it off to the side. You can just have the software do it for you, and it saves you a lot of time if you typically manually do that for something complex like these surfaces here. And then let's talk about the automatic hole recognition. That really helps to detect these holes that are maybe mundane or redundant tasks, and it's super easy to use. Just go under drilling here, and then you see this hole recognition tool. And right off the bat, it detected all the holes from the top here. It's detecting these two holes here, those two holes in the back, this hole there, which is a different size than the other ones. This counter bore hole as well, not just regular holes, counter bore holes, as well as that smaller hole there. And then once I hit OK here, it's going to go ahead and start generating these toolpaths. The neat thing about this is that it understands to do spot drilling for all these toolpaths first, or for these holes first, and then it can go in with the drill. And it chooses our tools for us as well, and then they're all in the correct order. All the spot drilling happens first, so we can go ahead and simulate that to see what it just did for us within like less than a minute there.
The interesting thing too, and I was telling you earlier, Brian, that I still hadn't used the hole recognition too much, but for the counter bore, it actually added a boring toolpath for it, right? Kind of a circular toolpath to kind of machine that out. You know, whereas instead it would have probably just added a drilling toolpath. It actually adds, or it's smart enough to add some sort of a counter bore toolpath for it.
Right.
Which is pretty interesting, right? That's at least on my end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super powerful tool that you typically see in multi-$1,000 software. They give you that option if you want to start incorporating that. If you want to just invest in a month of that to test it out and see, you know, if that's ultimately worth it for you guys there at the end. And then of course we have the surface inspection. So if you go over here to probing and you tell it, you know, I want to inspect this surface, this surface, this surface at that point, that surface, gives us the toolpaths for that with the probing tool. And then once you actually finish inspecting it, the machine can spit out the results back to you. And then you can see, okay, these green is good. That means that's exactly where we want it to be in terms of how it was machined. Maybe some of the red, we would want to reconsider the toolpath. Maybe we want to go back and take a look at, okay, what can I do differently there to help fix that? And this is just an example of this. It wasn't because of that steep and shallow. This is just an example that can be found actually in the data panel. This is one of the models you guys can take a look at yourself. Even if you don't have the extensions yet, you can take a look at how it would turn out and how these things look before even making that investment. So just wanted to share that with you guys. And if that's important to you guys to see the quality or tolerance or accuracy of your cuts, then yeah, this is definitely something I would consider investing in and taking a look at here in Fusion. And now that we can take a step away from the extensions real quick, just to the accessibility analysis, which is the last thing I want to go over here. There are a couple more things as well, but this is the last one I want to talk about, which is if you go under inspect and you go to accessibility analysis, you can essentially tell it, hey, for this body, I want to see in this downward direction, what can my tool reach? What do I have access to cutting? And you can see here, yeah, we can essentially touch everything. However, these three holes right here, maybe we need to rotate it a little bit or come in with a 5-axis or something like that to cut those holes. And of course, the bottom that's being mounted to the part there, we might want to flip it over and cut it as well. So it's just telling us like what you can cut at this angle and what you can't cut without having to guess, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and you know that's something that's pretty huge, especially if you know, you're a shop that maybe is getting parts sent in by customers. You're not the one that's directly working with that model, or you weren't the one that directly modeled it. So you might have some undercuts in there. And if they don't send the drawing right away, you know, it might be a little bit hard for you to notice that there's an undercut there. So just makes it a little bit easier to inspect the model and to see, you know, where the tricky parts are going to be in terms of machining the actual part.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right, so there's my information there. For Alex, it's alex.alvarez@ketiv.com as well. There's our KETIV number. If you guys have any questions or comments on what I just showed or anything regarding Fusion, please ask him now. More than happy to talk about them. And we do, here at KETIV, we do now support advanced manufacturing products like Power Mill, like I mentioned, as well as Feature Cam and Mold Flow. So if you guys have any interest in using those or are already using those and have some technical support questions, feel free to reach out to us in regard to them. So Power Mill is, you know, you get a lot more control. It's a very high-end milling turning package that you have so much control over your tool pads. And if you want to create those really high quality cuts with nice finishes, then Power Mill is the way to go. Feature Cam's a very automated tool that allows you to, like the hole recognition was an example, but you also could detect features in your model, and you could just tell it like, hey, can you find all the features, all the grooves, all the pockets in this model, and cut them out and create toolpaths for me. And Feature Cam is very renowned for that. It's the fastest programming package in the market for that kind of automated toolpath creation. So that's another one of the softwares that we now support. And then Mold Flow is its own can of worms that we also support. So if you guys have any questions in regard to those? Anything else you want to add, Alex, before we end it here?
No, no, I think you did a great job kind of covering some of the new updates, and
Thank you.
I was pretty impressed, honestly. As a just the price point that Fusion comes in and the amount of functionality that they have added to it. I think that's just an amazing job on Autodesk development team on what they're doing with the software.
Yeah, huge, a lot of huge functionality coming in this month. So, all right. Thank you guys for joining. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Again, my number or our number and my email there is on the screen. So if you have any questions, write down and reach out to us. So thank you guys for hopping on. We'll see you guys next month.